Okay, hello choir. Today's Ed puzzle is done from the comfort of my office, my room. So today we're going to talk about different stylistic things you can do with your voice, and how they happen in singing, how we create them, and then just a little bit on when they're actually applicable. And I'm excited for tomorrow because you'll take some of the stuff that you learned today and apply it to a couple different videos as to where it may or may not be appropriate to have them. So the first two that we'll talk about are a scoop and a slide. Both a scoop and a slide have to do with going up in pitch. The difference is kind of in um, the speed and the way we approach it. So with a scoop, we generally are going from one pitch to another. So for instance, or the next one, and we quickly attach from the bottom pitch to the top pitch. So if we're just going oh, it would be oh, or I could do la la. Normally you see that, and generally it's applicable in a lot of country music and pop music, and a lot of different styles. It doesn't really work its way into choral music unless otherwise indicated, because again, when we talk about wanting all the parts to blend together, someone scooping in that moment kind of takes away from that. So it's generally not as applicable. As my dog opens my door to try to come in here. One second. So sorry about that. So a slide, by difference, is much slower and more deliberate. And instead of going from one pitch to the other pitch with a slight connection, your goal is to hit every pitch on the way there. So, for instance, this note right here that I was just playing, you have technically this pitch, this one, this one. You have all of those pitches in between. So, the slide, you try to go through those pitches while on the same vowel and syllable, from one note to the other. So, if the difference is to we're doing it's versus scoop would be I kind of breeze through it. A slide is deliberate and it hits every pitch on the way up. And the way we learn how to use the slide is by doing like our siren exercise, where we learn how to do that slide. So those are two things that are actually used quite a bit. In pop music, you might hear like a Christina Aguilera or Beyonce do like a hey, like they'll do a little slide and then they'll do a little riff afterwards. So that's the difference between a scoop and a slide. So next, we have a fall off. So a fall off is kind of similar to a scoop and a slide, except for it's going down in pitch. And generally, it just sort of stops being sung and falls off. So what a fall off is, if you had a pitch, here, hey, you just fall off the edge. So hey, hey, generally you'll slide off the pitch and eventually just won't become distinguishable. You'll hear a lot of people do that at the ends of phrases. So like, well, I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Yeah. Or, hallelujah, hallelujah. They'll slide and sort of fall off and just sort of end the phrase early. So both those have to do with pitch. Fall off goes down, and it's a little more of a falls off, and generally actually has a breathy tone. It's normally used in pop music, and then scoop and slide. So the next one we're going to talk about is similar in the fall off, but it's a little bit different. It's called a portamento, which is a really fun word. It's an Italian word, and what it basically means is like a portal, like falling down, like a portal. So falling. It's kind of similar to a fall off. It's generally used in classical music, and the difference is where a fall off kind of just drops in pitch and eventually goes away. A portamento is almost like a slide where it tries to go from one pitch to another. So if the pitch was, if it was, sorry. If it was that, the ba-da-da-da-da. A portamento actually hits each of those pitches in fast succession and goes from one to the other. So if it's ah, 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 ah. See how it kind of hits every pitch on the way down. It's ba da 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 da, and it ends up on one pitch. So in classical music, they use that quite a bit. It'll be a hey, like it'll be a nice little stylistic thing that'll happen right before the end of a pitch. And I appreciate you listening to me just sing random vowels because sometimes I don't know what song I'm singing. It's just music. But that's a portamento, so that's kind of like a fall off with a little more of a purpose. The next thing is something that's used quite a bit in music theater as well as pop music, and that is vibrato at the end of a phrase. So, for instance, if I'm singing, the gotta find my corner of the sky. Generally use it for a bit of warmth and for a bit of like a motion towards the end of a phrase. So you could be finishing your song, whatever it is. Isn't it lovely all alone? Hard to match my mind of stone. I know those aren't the right words or the right phrase or the right place in the song, but you get the idea, right? So you're finishing off your phrase and you add just that little bit of vibrato at the end. And with that, it's really important to talk about the fact that vibrato itself is not forced. So in the video that you're going to watch tomorrow, which I'm really excited to show you, you'll notice some people trying to do things with their voices to force vibrato. One of them is dropping and moving their jaw around. So you'll see people do like a say. They'll try to relax their jaw and almost move it to create vibrato, which I actually have a hard time with. It doesn't really work for me. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. Ideally, our air is flowing down from our diaphragm, and are coming out from our lungs with our diaphragm is pressured, building support. We're free up at the top of our body, and that's what creates that hey, that freedom of movement in the voice. But vibrato is not supposed to be forced. It's not supposed to be created. That's where we get either gulp vibrato, which is like the hey, where it's moving way too fast, or we get the super slow old man where it's moving so slow. So we want to try and find a healthy middle, and that happens when we make our voice free. So next, we're going to talk about some dynamic things you can do with the voice. The two that are the most easiest that we do in choir all the time are a crescendo and a decrescendo. So crescendo, obviously the voice gets louder, from one to whenever. And a decrescendo, which is the opposite. So we can bring our voice down. So if I was singing, imagine there's no heaven. I don't know why I like imagine a lot. And I was crescendoing throughout the phrase. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. That would be crescendoing throughout the whole phrase. So generally I would start softer and then grow as we go on. And I would give you a cue with that by raising my left hand up and continuing to raise it to reach a certain point. A decrescendo is the opposite. It starts louder and it grows softer. So we could be at any point. We could be at mezzo piano, medium soft, and go to very, very, very soft PPP, right? If I was to sing that same phrase and I would start it loud, a decrescendo would sound like this. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. Right, that would be the decrescendo. Generally, getting softer is harder to do because what we tend to do when we sing softer is use less air. It becomes breathy. We get that try versus try. Right, that's the difference in what we need. We want that second sound, that nice full sound, even if it's super quiet. So that's crescendo and decrescendo. One of the more fun ones that we do, that if you were here 2 years ago, you already know how to do, is called a sforzando, which is A sforzando generally is it's generally forte, so loud. Then we back off all the way down the piano, and then we grow in crescendo. So it's a mix of a few different things. So normally you would do it on a certain vowel, like if you did it on ah, it would be ah forte. It would go quickly down to piano, and then it would come back. And the whole time, it's almost like a slide where the dynamics stay really consistent. It's consistently getting softer or consistently getting louder. So if I was a sforzando, it would be like hey, hey, right? So it's punches you, you back away, and then you pull forward. So that's what a sforzando is, which is one of my favorite things to do in choir, almost to the point where it's a little obnoxious. Another thing you can do is called a subito. So a subito, subito means suddenly. So you can add that to a dynamic marking, and you can change the way a phrase sounds. So generally, it's either a subito forte, so suddenly loud, or suddenly quiet. If I was to do suddenly quiet, and I was to do the imagine all the people living for today, and living for today with subito piano, it would sound like this. Imagine all the people living for today. Ooh. Right, so it's only we get quiet, and it can really affect the way a sound works, or a song goes, because you can wrap the audience in with a dynamic, and then suddenly, boom, you change it, and then it kind of keeps that interest and keeps that musicality going. A few other things we can talk about, and then we'll be good, because I obviously don't want to give you too much today. A staccato, we talk about staccato and legato, and they can be used in different songs to create an effect. So, for instance, staccato, in classical music, there's always the Queen of the Night. The does that whole staccato, versus slower songs generally have more legato phrases. But in pop music, you can create that sort of idea too. Generally, when we have um, a rap song going on, there's always the hook, right? There's the singing portion partway through, and that singer can use legato to create different ways. So I'm gonna date myself, and talk about a song called Airplanes, featuring, it was by B.O.B., featuring Haley Williams. I've obviously heard more rap music since then, but that's the one that's coming to my mind right now. The Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky like shooting stars? I could use a wish right now. Right, that's that song. During the Wish Right Now, she actually uses sort of a staccato to create an effect. Everything before that's legato. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night shine like night sky like shooting stars? I could really use a wish right now, wish right now, wish right now. So she does that. So that's the difference of like staccato and legato, even in a phrase. When that airplanes in the night sky like shooting stars is very legato. And then she has the wish right now, wish right now, wish right now. Right, so you can see how within a phrase you use staccato and legato to create an effect. And rappers generally are using that staccato when they're getting the rhythm, but sometimes they'll elongate things, or you'll listen to someone do speed rap, and they'll slow down in a section to really change the way things work. That staccato and legato is super important. Finally, this is more of an individual, or a hard one to explain, but a run or a riff, or in Italian we call it a melisma, is a series of notes sung in quick succession on one syllable. So that's what we call a melisma. So the classical one of that would be something that a lot of people are singing, which is Vittoria mio core. It sounds like this. The word is esho. Esho d'amore la servitù. So it's the but it's on just on the vowel sho, o, sho, right? And you may be thinking, I'm never going to use that in pop music. Well, if I talk about the beginning of what's the name of the song? It's Christina Aguilera. Ain't No Other Man, right? Ain't No Other Man can stand up to you. Or you'll think of a lot of different pop song singers. Ariana Grande comes to mind as well. But with the beginning of Ain't No Other Man, she does a slide. We talked about a slide, and she does that into a melisma or a run, or in pop music we call it a run or a riff. She does that after the slide. She does the hey. She does that slide off, right? So that would be a run, a riff, melisma. It's the same, all the same thing, just different ways to call it. So, talking about things, we have a scoop and a slide. Both of the pitches going up. The difference is the speed and hitting all the notes on the way up. We have vibrato happening at the end of a phrase. We have a crescendo, a decrescendo. We have a sforzando, which is punch and forte, and then push through a crescendo from piano. And then we have a subito, suddenly loud, suddenly quiet, suddenly whatever dynamic. We have staccato versus legato, so short and choppy versus long and connected. We have a portamento, which was back a little bit earlier, which is the idea of falling off, but it's with a purpose. So you're landing on one spot, hitting all the notes in between. And then we talked about a run or a riff. So tomorrow you're going to get an Edpuzzle. And those of you who have done this before, you've probably done this with me last year and the years prior when we've worked on our national anthem. You are going to take Fergie, her performance of the national anthem, which is a infamous one, and Whitney Houston's performance of the national anthem, which is one of my favorites. And you're going to see if you can find some of those different stylistic things that they use, and when they're appropriate and inappropriate, and how just basically critiquing how they worked and how they all went together. So with that, I hope you have a great day.